Before I became a CFO helping contractor couples build profitable businesses, I was training to become a pilot. I went to school for aeronautical science. I spent years learning to fly, and honestly, that's what I thought I would be doing for the rest of my life. But here's what I didn't expect. Everything I learned in the cockpit became the foundation for how I run businesses today.
Really?
Because flying a plane and running a business have way more in common than you'd think. In both, the stakes are high. In both, you're responsible for getting everyone home safely. And in both, one mistake can be catastrophic. And in both, systems are the only thing standing between success and disaster.
I never thought about it like that.
So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 lessons that I learned from the cockpit that completely change how I approach business. And if you're a contractor couple trying to build something sustainable, these lessons might just change how you approach your business too. Welcome back to Built for Two, CEO Edition. Well, hey there. I'm Kimberly Ferguson, CEO and founder of The Emerald Edge. Around here, we help husband and wife business partners turn numbers into next steps and plans into profits. Today's episode is a little bit different. I'm actually going to share my story, how I went from wanting to be a pilot to becoming a CFO, and more importantly, how the lessons I learned in flight school became the framework for everything I teach contractor couples today. Because here's the thing, whether you're flying a plane or running a business, the principles are the same. So let's dive into the 5 lessons from the cockpit that changed everything for me.
Let's do this.
So let's start with a quick story time. When I was younger, I wanted to fly for a living. I wanted to fly as a helicopter pilot in the Coast Guard. However, I learned very quickly that you have to have 20/20 vision, and as you can tell, I don't have that. So, shift, right? I shifted that vision for the vision of flying helicopters for hospitals, so doing ambulatory flight. I went to school for aeronautical science, and during that time, I had a professor tell me, you're going to be a pilot, you're going to be a millionaire. There's just a fact of life. So you should learn how to manage your money. That sounded very logical to me. So I decided to take his advice and add a business minor to my aeronautical science major and started taking business classes, investing, accounting, all the things, right? So I took Accounting 101. And when I was taking this course, the professor had been teaching this course for 30 years. And at the end of the course, she approached me and said, I really don't have students who do as well in this class as you've done. Have you ever considered a job in accounting? Being the very intelligent teenager that I was, no, I'm going to be a pilot. Thanks so much. Have a good day, was my response. However, after I got married, my husband and I moved to a different state. And when I began applying for jobs, I applied for things that made sense, like becoming a secretary at a flight school, trying to kind of get my foot in the door, right? But the only job that I got was a position in bookkeeping, and the rest is history. So what did you learn? The first lesson I learned as a pilot is this: the buck stops with you.
What do you mean?
When you're the pilot in command, you are responsible for everything. If something goes wrong, it's on you. If the plane crashes, you're the one to blame, not the weather, not the equipment, not the air traffic controller. You.
Oh, poop.
And that's a heavy responsibility. And it forces you to take ownership in a way that most people never have to. You can't pass the buck. You can't blame someone else. You can't make excuses. You're in the captain's seat, and that means everything that happens is ultimately your responsibility. And running a business is exactly the same. When you're the business owner, especially when you're running a business with your spouse, the buck stops with you. If the business fails, it's on you. If a client is unhappy, it's on you. If the cash flow is tight, it's on you. If a project goes sideways, you guessed it, it's on you.
It is always me, 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 me.
Now, that doesn't mean you're doing everything yourself. It doesn't mean you can't delegate. It doesn't mean you can't have a team. But it does mean that at the end of the day, you're the one who's held accountable. And here's why that matters. When you truly accept that the buck stops with you, you stop making excuses. You stop blaming external circumstances. You stop waiting for someone else to fix your problems. You take ownership, and that is when everything changes. I see contractor couples all the time who are stuck because they're blaming everything else. The economy, the clients, the suppliers, the weather, and sure, those things matter, but they're not the reason your business isn't working. The reason your business isn't working is because you haven't taken full ownership of making it work.
Life's not fair, is it?
When you're the pilot in command, you don't get to blame turbulence for a rough landing. You're expected to handle the turbulence and land the plane safely anyway. That's the job. Same thing with business. You don't get to blame the market or the competition or the circumstances. You're expected to navigate those challenges and build a successful business anyway. That's the job. So the first lesson from the cockpit is accept that the buck stops with you. Own it, embrace it, and then lead accordingly.
It ends up all on me.
The second lesson I learned as a pilot is this. You need to be able to pivot at a moment's notice. Things change in the air. Weather shifts, engines fail, equipment malfunctions. Air traffic control reroutes you. And when that happens, you don't get to panic. You don't get to freeze. You have to assess the situation, make a decision, and execute. Fast.
Fast, like really fast.
I remember one of my training flights where we were practicing engine failures. The instructor would pull the throttle back without warning, simulating an engine failure, and I'd have to immediately go through the emergency checklist, find a place to land, adjust the glide path, communicate with air traffic control, all while staying calm and focused. Because here's the thing. In an emergency, hesitation kills. Indecision kills. You have to be able to pivot quickly, trust your training, and execute. And running a business is exactly the same, though the stakes are a little lower.
Initiate emergency repair protocol.
Things change. A big client cancels, a key employee quits, a supplier goes out of business, a project goes over budget, the market shifts. And when that happens, you don't get to panic. You have to assess, decide, and execute. I see contractor couples all the time who get paralyzed when things don't go according to plan. They freeze, they overthink, they wait to see what happens. And by the time they finally make a decision, well, it's too late. The damage is done. But the best business owners, just like the best pilots, are the ones who can pivot quickly. Pivot! They don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. They assess the situation, make the best decision they can with the information they have, and they move forward. Now, here's the key. You can only pivot quickly if you have a foundation to pivot from. So in flying, that foundation is your training. You've practiced emergency procedures so many times that when something goes wrong, you don't have to think. You just execute. And in business, that foundation is your systems and your strategy. When you have a system in place, when you have a playbook, when you have clarity on your numbers and your goals, you can pivot quickly because you're not starting from zero. You're adjusting from a point of strength. But if you don't have that foundation, if you're just winging it every day, then when something goes wrong, well, you're lost. You don't know what to do. You don't have a framework to guide you. And that's when businesses crash.
Oops.
So the second lesson from the cockpit is this. Build the foundation so you can pivot when you need to, because you will need to. Things will go wrong, and your ability to adapt quickly is what determines whether you survive or not.
At all costs.
The third lesson I learned as a pilot is this. Systems keep the plane in the air. Flying is all about checklists. Before you even start the engine, you go through a pre-flight checklist. Before you take off, you go through a takeoff checklist. Before you land, you go through a landing checklist. There are checklists for normal operations and checklists for emergencies. And these checklists aren't suggestions, they're requirements. Because when you're flying a plane, you can't afford to forget something. You can't afford to skip a step. One missed item on a checklist can be the difference between a safe flight and a disaster.
And they're making a list and they're checking it twice.
I remember my flight instructor drilling this into me over and over again. Follow the checklist every time, no exceptions, even if you've done it 1,000 times. Even if you think you know it by heart, follow the checklist. Because here's the thing. Your memory is fallible. You get distracted, you get tired, you get complacent, but the checklist doesn't. The checklist is always there, making sure you don't miss anything critical.
Start checklist complete.
And running a business is exactly the same. Systems and checklists are what keeps your business running smoothly. They're what ensures quality control. They're what makes sure that nothing falls through the cracks. They're what allow you to scale without everything falling apart. But most contractor couples don't have systems. They're just winging it. They're relying on memory. They're hoping they don't forget anything important. And then wonder why things keep going wrong. Why projects run over budget, why clients are unhappy, why they're constantly putting out fires. It's because they don't have checklists. They don't have systems. They're trying to fly a plane without following the procedures. And eventually that plane is just going to fall out of the sky.
Come here, let me show you something.
So here's what you need to do. For every recurring process in your business, create a checklist. How do you onboard a new client? Checklist. How do you start a new project? Checklist. How do you handle a change order? Checklist. How do you close out a project? Checklist. When you have a checklist, you don't have to rely on memory. You don't have to hope you didn't forget something. You just follow the checklist. And that consistency is what creates quality. That consistency is what builds trust with your clients. That consistency is what allows you to grow. In aviation, we have a saying, trust the checklist. And in business, well, the same rule applies. Build the systems, follow the checklists, and watch your business run smoother than it ever has before. So the third lesson from the cockpit is this. Systems aren't optional. They're what keeps the plane in the air. And they're what keeps your business from crashing.
Is the checklist complete? Yeah.
The fourth lesson I learned as a pilot is this. You can't always be the operator and the decision maker. In a multi-crew aircraft, there are two pilots, the pilot flying and the pilot monitoring. The pilot flying is hands-on. They're controlling the aircraft. The pilot monitoring is reading checklists, communicating with air traffic control, making decisions, watching for problems. And here's the key. These roles switch back and forth. Sometimes the captain is flying and the first officer is monitoring. Sometimes it's the other way around. But they're never both doing the same thing at the same time. Because if both pilots are heads down flying the plane, well, nobody's watching the big picture. And that's when mistakes happen.
There is no room for error.
The pilot monitoring has a critical job. They're the ones with the perspective. They're the ones who can see what's coming. They're the one who can catch mistakes before they become disasters. They're the decision maker, while the other pilot is the operator.
Michael handles more of the big picture stuff.
And running a business is exactly the same way. When you're starting out, you're both the operator and the decision maker. You're doing the work and running the business. You're on the job site and you're handling the finances. You're talking to clients and you're managing the team. You're doing everything. But as the business grows, well, you can't keep doing that. You have to transition from being the operator to being the decision maker. You have to step back from the day-to-day work and start focusing on the big picture. Because here's the thing. Your experience and your judgment become far more valuable than your work.
I mean, I can't do everything.
When you're on the job site swinging a hammer, you're contributing the value of one person's labor. But when you're making strategic decisions about which jobs to take, how to price, who to hire, how to grow, you're contributing value that affects the entire business. I see contractor couples all the time who are stuck because they can't let go of being the operator. They're still doing all the work themselves. They're still involved in every single task. And they wonder why they can't grow. They wonder why they're exhausted. They wonder why they feel trapped. It's because they haven't made the transition. They're still trying to be both the pilot flying and the pilot monitoring. And you can't really do both effectively.
Oh, I have people for that now. You're up.
So here's what needs to happen. As your business grows, you need to start delegating the operating. Hire people to do the work. Train them, trust them, and step into the role of decision maker. You become the pilot monitoring. You're watching the big picture. You're making strategic decisions. You're catching problems before they become disasters. This is one of the hardest transitions for business owners to make because they're good at the work. You've built a business by being good at the work. But at some point, your business doesn't need you to be good at the work. It needs you to be good at leading.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the fourth lesson from the cockpit is this. You can't always be the operator. At some point, you have to become the decision maker. And that transition is what allows your business to scale beyond you.
How are operations at the company, just day to day?
The fifth lesson I learned as a pilot is this. Flying is rarely a solo job. Even when you're flying solo, you're not really alone. You've got air traffic control, you've got weather briefers, you've got maintenance crews, you've got instructors and mentors. You've got a whole system of people supporting you to make sure that you get from point A to point B safely. And in multi-crew operations, it's even more obvious. You have a co-pilot, you have flight attendants, you have ground crew, you have dispatchers. Everyone has a role, everyone contributes, and the flight only works when everyone does their job. There's no shame in needing help. In fact, it's expected. It's required because flying is complex and there are just too many variables for one person to manage alone. You need a team.
Say team, like a sports team.
And running a business is exactly the same. You can't do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone. And there's nothing wrong with needing help.
You were right. Everyone needs help sometimes. And that's okay.
But I see contractor couples all the time who are trying to do everything themselves. They're the CEO, the CFO, the project manager, the salesperson, the bookkeeper, the HR department, the marketing team. They're wearing every single hat and they're drowning. And when I suggest they get help, they say things like, we can't afford it, or nobody can do it as well as we can, or we'll hire when we're bigger. But the reality is you can't get bigger without help. Can't scale without a team. You can't grow your business beyond your personal capacity if you're trying to do everything yourself.
You need all hands on deck.
In aviation, we have a concept called crew resource management. It's the idea that the best outcomes happen when everyone on the crew is empowered to contribute. When the captain listens to the first officer, when the flight attendants communicate concerns, when everyone works together. The same concept applies in business. The best outcomes happen when you build a team and empower them to contribute. When you delegate, when you trust, when you let go of control and start leading instead.
You're right. Something is missing. But what?
And here's where I'll make my pitch. One of the best investments you can make as a contractor couple is hiring a financial co-pilot. Someone who understands your numbers, who can help you make strategic decisions, who can catch problems before they become disasters. That's what a CFO does. We are your co-pilot. We're not flying the plane, but we're monitoring. We're reading the checklists. We're watching the instruments. We're making sure you don't miss anything critical. We're helping you make decisions from a position of clarity instead of confusion. You don't need to do this alone. And honestly, you shouldn't. Because the businesses that thrive are the ones that build teams, the ones that get help, the ones that understand that flying is never a solo job.
And I'm not going to be flying solo.
So the fifth lesson from the cockpit is this. Get help. Build a team. Hire a co-pilot. Because you can't scale alone. And there's nothing wrong with needing support.
That's it in a nutshell, basically, right?
So let's bring this home. Everything I learned in the cockpit became the foundation for how I run businesses today. The buck stops with you. Own it. You need to be able to pivot at a moment's notice. Build the foundation so you can. Systems keep the plane in the air, so create checklists for everything. You can't always be the operator, so transition to being the decision maker. And flying is never a solo job, so get help. These 5 lessons didn't just make me a better pilot. They made me a better business owner. And they made me a better CFO for the contractor couples I worked with today. Because at the end of the day, running a business is a lot like flying a plane. The stakes are high, the margin for error is small, and the only way to succeed is to have systems, clarity, and a team you can trust.
Well, I live by my rules. I don't live by your rules.
So here's what I want you to do this week. Pick one of these 5 lessons and apply it to your business. Take ownership of something you've been avoiding. Build a checklist for a process you've been winging. Delegate something you've been holding on to. Whatever it is, just pick one and take action. And if you're a contractor couple who's ready to stop flying solo and start building a team, well, let's talk. Use the link below to contact us at the Emerald Edge. We help husband and wife teams build systems, the clarity, and the financial strategy they need to scale without crashing. Your business should give you freedom, not keep you trapped in the cockpit doing everything yourself. And having a co-pilot is how you get there. This has been Built for Two, where systems keep your business steady, strategy helps it grow, and building it with your soulmate makes the whole adventure worthwhile. Remember, the best pilots know when to fly and when to let someone else take control. The same is true for the best business owners. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in my next video.